This is a story about a very special place. A small town in the middle of America's largest city. A place called Parkchester. A place of families. A place where hard-working people of modest means could become part of the American dream. Parkchester, the grand old neighborhood.
Here's a picture of the neighborhood.
Here's the corner where we stood. Me in uniform, home on leave. Friends and family, Christmas Eve.
Faded pictures in my scrapbook.
Just thought I'd take one more look
And recall when we were all
In the neighborhood.
In the neighborhood.
In the neighborhood.
Parkchester opened to its first tenants in early 1940. Within 2 years, it grew to a population of over 40,000 residents. My name is Harry DeCilia. I lived in Parkchester for the first 22 years of my life, from 1944 to 1966, as did my wife, the former Pat Flanagan. We still keep in touch with scores of our old Parkchester friends. We are the first generation of grown children of Parkchester. Our lives and the lives of our families have been shaped and nourished by the grand old neighborhood. Starting in 1938, the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company, MetLife, designed and built the complex. The years between the mid-1940s and the early 1950s were recorded photographically, and these precious photos depict recreation life for the first-generation kids. Join me now for a journey back to these early years. Maybe you'll see yourself and some of your old friends in some of these pictures. All of us have wonderful memories of growing up in Parkchester. We'll focus mainly on those positive recollections. However, there are two issues to acknowledge at the outset, but not dwell upon. First, like all New York City housing projects, Parkchester was racially segregated, so the pictures you'll see do not include people of color. That is simply the way life was back then. As tenants, we didn't make those rules, we just lived under them. Second, some former residents feel that Parkchester was a too highly controlled environment, both for the parents and the children. If your parents got a letter from the office, or you got your name taken by the Parkchester cops, you probably felt that way too. But it doesn't seem to have diminished the affection of former residents for the grand old neighborhood. You may be surprised to learn that the need for Parkchester was spawned by the stock market crash of 1929. MetLife had enormous losses and began to search for ways to make other investments. At that time, they were prevented by New York state law from owning real estate, so they lobbied the state to change the law and began to research large tracts of land to buy to build a housing complex. In February 1938, New York State passed a law that permitted insurance companies to own real estate, and 2 months later, MetLife announced that they had purchased the 120-acre New York Catholic Protectory property in the Southeast Bronx. In August of 1938, they broke ground on the site, and less than 2 years later, in March 1940, Parkchester opened the South Quadrant to the first tenants. The following month, they opened the Recreation Department. And by March 1942, all of Parkchester's 12,272 apartments were fully occupied. The New York Herald Tribune cover story from April 1938 announced the birth of Parkchester. The map shows some roads, like Storrow Street and Hogewet Avenue, that were eliminated, and it does not show Metropolitan Avenue because it was not yet created. Later, MetLife bought another small tract of land that allowed them to connect Parkchester to U Grant Circle and the East 177th Street subway station, making commuting a lot easier for everyone. MetLife established a somewhat independent board of design to oversee the design and construction process. The two key people who were very well known and respected for their talents were architect Richmond Shreve and planner landscaper Gilmore Clark. Shreve's firm had designed the Empire State Building, and Clark's company had done the landscape design for the Bronx River Parkway and the 1939 World's Fair in Queens. The name Parkchester was derived from two adjacent neighborhoods at the time, Park Versailles to the west of the site and Westchester Heights to the east. Parkchester's building layout, probably due to planner Gilmore Clark's brilliance, was inspired. The random building pattern with only two through streets gave the space a unique and safe identity. To this day, Parkchester is not dominated by vehicular traffic. MetLife could have legally built twice as many apartments if they used the typical city grid pattern, but they only built half as many, so much more space could be set aside for social purposes like playgrounds and parks. Even still, it was the largest housing project in the world when it was completed. Between 45,000 and 50,000 people lived there at one time in the early years, and over 500 employees worked there, including groundskeepers, servicemen, painters, private police, and the legendary recreation teachers. A scale model of Parkchester showing every building in detail was displayed by MetLife at the 1939 World's Fair in Queens. The complex was specifically designed as a middle-class community. If you earned too little or even too much, you were excluded. 4 grammar schools were located at Parkchester's perimeter: St. Raymond's, St. Helena's, PS 106, and PS 102. Over 8,000 kids attended them at the peak. Some of Parkchester's businesses, like Macy's and the Loews American, are still there. Others are gone, like Cornell, Cushman's Bakery, Loft Candies, Tom McCann, Womrath's, St. Clair's, Plymouth, and the Laundrettes. I'm sure each of you can remember many more. It cost MetLife $50 million to build Parkchester. In today's dollars, that would be over $750 million. To give you some idea of how big the project was, over 120 million pounds of steel, 111 million bricks, and 15 million square feet of parquet flooring were used in the constructions. The buildings only used a quarter of Parkchester's 129 acres. Social space like the ovals, playgrounds, and ball field took up over half the space. This was unheard of for city housing projects at the time. Parkchester had a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. There were 7,000 one-bedroom, 4,600 two-bedroom, but only 550 three-bedroom apartments. They were obviously unaware of the post-war baby boom that would come a few years later. You may be surprised to know that Parkchester even had 98 studio apartments. Ever see one? The landscaping of Parkchester was on a scale that had never been seen before in an urban housing project. 3,700 trees of all types were planted, as were tens of thousands of hedge and ground cover plants. 60,000 cubic yards of topsoil were brought in, and no less than 50 full-time landscapers were employed to take care of the grounds. The oval sculptures, known as Fantasia, were done by Raymond Granville Barger, inspired by his childhood growing up on the Potomac River in Maryland. 6 different New York City-based sculptors created the building sculptures. There are 500 sculptures on the corners of the buildings and 600 entrance plaques in the Art Moderne style covering 6 themes: domestic life, animals, mythology, sports, arts, and industry. Believe it or not, this is Unionport Road in 1938, a diagonal dirt road that went through the New York Catholic Protectory property. Apparently, MetLife was required to keep the road, so when they designed the new Parkchester layout, they added another diagonal road, Metropolitan Avenue, and put a roundabout, the Oval, at the intersection. Here's the entire Protectory property in 1938 from the air. You can see part of U Grant Circle in the lower left corner and St. Raymond's Church in the upper right corner. This is Parkchester in 1941 when it was nearing completion. You can clearly see the 2 main through streets and the Oval, as well as the random pattern of the buildings. The powerhouse and smokestack on East Tremont Avenue are at the top center of the photo. The smaller ovals in the west, east, and south quadrants are also visible. The four quadrants, north, south, east, and west, were created by the intersection of the two main streets, Unionport Road and Metropolitan Avenue. This photo from the subway station shows the buildings under construction on the finger of land purchased separately by MetLife to connect the complex to public transit, as well as the Parkchester sign added to the East 177th Street sign on the platform. From 1940 to 1942, all 12,272 families moved in. Some months saw the arrival of 1,000 families. There was so much activity that moving vans had to check in first based on a prearranged schedule. MetLife was even controlling the environment before it was completed. This is a view of the new Unionport Road, looking south at some businesses and buildings in the East Quadrant. I love the Elliott Ness cars in this picture. This photo of the Loews American Movie Theater was taken around December 1940 because that's when the movie on the marquee came out. The theater seated over 2,000 people. It was the only movie house inside Parkchester, but there were three others nearby: the RKO Castle Hill, the Palace, and the Circle. By the way, I'd love to own that roadster in the foreground of this picture. Here's the main entrance to Macy's Parkchester on Metropolitan Avenue around 1950. Notice how well dressed the people are, and the baby carriages parked out front while the parents shopped inside. Some parents would give a quarter to young girls who would mind the carriage, and the baby too. It was a very different time, to be sure. Here's a view of the East Playgrounds and Oval from the top of a nearby building. Judging from the age and absence of cars, the picture was probably taken in the mid-1940s, not too long after the East Quadrant was open to tenants. For a very brief period early on, the ball field was a single, unpaved baseball field. It may have lasted only 1 year before they realized it could be put to better use for a larger number of kids to play. Here's the second iteration of the ball field. Basically, some grass and a lot of dirt. This version lasted only a short period of time too, before the field was enlarged and paved. Most of the benches surrounding the field were removed to make the field bigger. This is Dominic Cafaro in his best Jack LaLanne pose. He was Parkchester's second recreation director, but he served the longest time, from about 1941 until the late 1950s or early 60s. He had the foresight to commission the photos you are about to see by hiring two professional photographers who lived in Parkchester to take them. Their names were Myron Weinberg and Michael Labate. We are very fortunate that these wonderful images exist and have survived all these years. Many thanks to Janice Cafaro and the Cafaro family for making them public. Here's Dominic Cafaro in the suit and tie with several full-time employees of the recreation or rec teacher staff. These wonderful people were a big part of our daily life. They started and supervised an endless number of outdoor and indoor recreation activities, including arts and crafts, sports leagues and tournaments, pageants, contests, and games. Many mothers sent their kids down to the playground on their own because they knew the rec teachers would be there for supervision. In the early years, during World War II, most of the recreation activities were for adults because the post-war baby boom hadn't yet started. Who doesn't remember the younger men playing handball and the retired men playing shuffleboard? The Parkchester Handball Club, shown here at their annual awards dinner, were very successful in tournaments around the city and the region. In this picture taken during the war, the sign refers to a hoped-for victory, and the flag, by the way, only has 48 stars. Some of the first tenants already had families they brought to Parkchester, so teenagers were living there in the mid-1940s when this picture was probably taken. It shows a square dance in the East Quadrant playground, with everyone dressed up, of course. Everyone was on their best behavior in those days. Another shot of teenagers in the early 1950s dancing around a maypole in the ball field. Notice that the field is paved and the trees have grown. A somewhat earlier picture of Irish step dancers in the ball field. The field is unpaved, and they had to install a temporary wooden stage for the dancers. This photograph is the closest image you'll see to a Norman Rockwell painting. The boy in this roller skating race has just realized right at the start that he may be beaten by not one, not two, but 3 girls. His expression tells the whole story. Note the man in the hat, suit, and tie who appears to be the race starter. The caption on this photo says it is a decorated doll carriage parade. It's probably taken in the mid-1950s. I'm sure everyone will remember the carriage room where we kept our tricycles and baby carriages, not to mention various other family possessions that could be chained to the railings on the walls. This is the urban version of bobbing for apples in the fall season. No soaking wet clothes to irritate these kids' parents. Those rec teachers were certainly very creative. The rec teachers organized big pageants every spring, summer, and fall in the ball field. This summer pageant picture features hula dancers. My building buddy, Carol Ward, now Carol Stellwagen, is right out front in this shot. This spring choral group photo is priceless. It was taken around 1950. I recognize several of the girls in the front row, including Carol Toomey, Lorraine Zimmerman, Lorraine Quigley, and Stephanie Robacek. Note the charming old microphones on stands. No event was more renowned than the annual Indian pageant. Of course, today it would be called the Native American pageant. Some kids would spend weeks in the rec office making their costumes and headdresses. This photo depicts an early 1950s pageant because the field is unpaved. The two adults seated in the center are rec teachers who supervise the activities. Another ball field shot of the Indian pageant. Most of these pictures show a rec teacher with the children because Dominic Cafaro was trying to highlight their involvement with the kids. Before the polio scare of the early 1950s, the outdoor showers in each playground gave Parkchester kids a chance to go to the beach every summer day. After the polio vaccine ended the disease, however, the showers were never reopened. All of Parkchester's 20 or so playgrounds were always filled with kids unless it was raining. In this picture, you'll notice an almost complete absence of parents. This is a testament to the effectiveness of the rec teachers who supervised everything. You can also see kids waiting patiently to take their turn on the swings. The monkey bars are in the background, and there were slides, ping pong tables, seesaws, tetherball, and knock hockey games as well in each playground. Remember the clip-on wheels that could turn your old shoes into roller skates? Roller hockey was popular in the ball field for a time, at least until inline skates came along. On nice days in the summer, the arts and crafts projects moved from the rec office to a table in the playground. Here a group of boys are working together on something for one of the pageants. The rec teachers even sponsored field trips to various attractions around the city. I spotted myself with Paul Wondrash in this picture, boarding a bus that would take us down to the Museum of Natural History in Manhattan. We're all wearing our standard issue Converse All-Star sneakers and dungarees with rolled-up cuffs, plus striped t-shirts. Basketball saved many young Parkchester boys from a life of crime, as I like to point out. Here's a winning tournament team that includes Donnie Stellwagen, Jimmy Travers, Jimmy Cafaro, Dominic's son, Johnny Kagan, Huey Ryan, Tommy Mullen, and Al Gruber. Here's another winning team sponsored by the Parkchester Kiwanis Club. Included in this picture are many guys who went to high school and college on basketball scholarships, including John Deary, Dave Slattery, Bob Lennon, Kevin Riley, and Kevin Mullen. Also in this picture are Dominic Cafaro, holding the trophy, and on the right, John Murray, who organized the legendary Murray All-Star basketball teams that were well-known and successful around New York City. This may be a picture of the very first outdoor music concert, at least in Parkchester. I think the record player is playing some patriotic music that the kids are required to listen to. The flag and army helmet on one of the boys suggests it might be Veterans Day. On rainy days or during the winter, activities would move inside to the rec office. Here's a meeting of the Checkers Club. That's Sid, the rec teacher with the mustache, standing on the left. This tricycle parade is probably happening on the 4th of July, sometime in the early to mid-1950s. The boy with the flag on his bike up front appears to have baseball cards in his wheel spokes to make it sound like a motor. The caption on this photo says it's the funny costume contest in the North Playground. The rec teacher on the right is Hank, and I see Joel Angelotti in the lineup. I think it took a lot of courage to dress up like that, especially if you were a boy. The rec teachers even organized and produced complete plays. This is the cast of Cinderella, and that's John Mulvaney in the suit, and the rec teachers are Margaret on the left and Mrs. Panzarelli on the right. This is a doll contest in the North Playground. Don't ask me who the winners were. Just behind the girls you see some of my friends playing basketball, and behind them are the men playing handball. Never a dull moment. During the holiday season, kids would dress up and sing Christmas carols and other holiday songs in the Oval, which was decorated to look like an alpine village. In this picture, I see Maureen and Jimmy Stanley, Jerry Riley, and Ricky Jansen. Santa would visit all of the playgrounds each year, and the kids would tell him what they wanted for Christmas. I hope he told their parents afterwards. That's one of the rec teachers standing to Santa's left. Another Santa visit picture. Dominic Cafaro is on the left with his cigar in hand. The front row includes Tommy Burke, Ricky Jansen, and Butchie Riley. Sadly, Tommy and Ricky are no longer with us. Even though most of us moved away from Parkchester when we graduated from school or got married, we always knew we had grown up in a wonderful place. That seems even more true now that we are older. And many of us have maintained lifelong friendships with the kids who lived in our building, our quadrant, or our playground. We'll always cherish our childhood memories of growing up in the grand old neighborhood.
Faded pictures in my scrapbook. Just thought I'd take one more look and recall when we were all in the neighborhood. And all those friends, where did they go? Where did they go? Yeah. All those friends we used to know.
In the neighborhood.
In the neighborhood.
In the neighborhood.
In the neighborhood.
The new millennium breathed fresh life into the grand old neighborhood. A consortium of socially concerned and fiscally competent corporations gained ownership of Parkchester and began a program of comprehensive renovation and improvements to the apartments and condominiums.
We're going to be renovating 12,271 apartments with new plumbing, new electrical, and 65,000 new windows. Together, this will upgrade a community of 45,000 residents and make it one of the most livable and affordable communities in New York City.
So housing, I think, is probably the most important building block of the foundation of a new New York. This is an important project and a really good one.
The neighborhood welcomed residents of all colors and ethnicities.
We have 2 hours of some Cuban music for you tonight.
Let's make you feel welcome, y'all. Come on.
And the Recreation Department has continued its program of fostering involvement in the community.
I'm glad y'all came out today to our next to last musical event. So we're going to continue, get started with our first performers.
2 times to the left. Come on, y'all. Throw your hands up. Now stomp that devil down. Right foot to the front. Left foot, back it up. 2 rocks to the right. And turn yourself around. 2 times to the right. 2 times to the left.
Today, the grand old neighborhood stands as a shining example of how good housing at fair prices can improve the lives of those who live here.